Have we reached the point now where athleticism at the quarterback position, being able to run, all those kinds of things, it's not like a bonus. It's not, hey, this is a nice thing you bring to the table in addition to actually doing your job as a quarterback. It's actually a necessity for the prototype quarterback in 2022. Like, we're no longer looking for the next Peyton Manning or Tom Brady. We're actually saying if you're going to be that style of quarterback, you almost need to be those guys, because what we're looking for looks more like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes or Justin Herbert or even Joe Burrow. It's a Trevor Lawrence. It's a guy that can move. And if you can't move, you're actually restricting so much of the offense that it's too hard now. It's too hard to be that good so that you can survive as that kind of player.
And most of the guys you mentioned are still pocket first guys who can run. Allen runs a little bit more than the other guys on the list. There's the other extremes, which we have Lamar Jackson, Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, who are the running game, right, for their teams. They are the catalyst for their running games. So the question is, do you need a mobile quarterback now?
Mm-hmm.
I'd say probably yes. The idea, now, we are 2 years removed from Tom Brady being the Super Bowl winning quarterback. But I think part of the whole thing is we shouldn't be chasing Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees any longer anyway, right? Like, Aaron Rodgers was the first guy who kind of came in and was like, I can do those stuff that those guys do. And oh, by the way, I'm really athletic and can run and throw on the run a little bit more. And that felt like a cheat code for a few years of Rodgers' career. And I think we are at that point.
I think it always has, but now teams understand how to use it better. Like, we've gone to the days where you're like, we don't want our quarterback running ever because you expose him to a hit, and that's the worst thing that could ever happen. You know, we can't have that. Now teams are like, oh, if I've got a guy that can move, we're going to tap into that. Maybe we're not going to run QB power every play, but we're going to use the fact that this guy is athletic and mobile and can change the dynamic of what a defense has to do. Because, you know, you had Aaron Rodgers. Before that, like Dante Culpepper at one point was a cheat code. Donovan McNabb, like these guys that could be pocket passers but also take off. And when Culpepper took off, he would outrun, he'd run over linebackers. When McNabb took off, he would make plays. You go back, Joe Montana was heralded as bringing something different to the table because he would scramble. And this was like witchcraft at the time. You know, a guy that can just, he'll leave the pocket and then he'll run and then he'll make a play. It's like, what is this? How do we stop that? Like, you know, so I think we've just evolved to the point now where, because offenses are so prepared and willing, eager to like assist that part of their game, you can actually build things into the system that just causes so many more problems than this guy's going to be in the same spot every drop back.
Well, let's describe what does QB mobility look like? Because if you're going to throw Joe Burrow into the mix here, the thing Joe Burrow does is scrambles a couple times a game for a first down,
mm-hmm.
right? Which I think is great. I mean, I think that's extremely valuable. And the way I always phrase it as not Burrow's style, raising the floor of the offense, but it's like it's a couple plays a game where you don't have to make a great throw, a couple plays a game where you don't have to read it out perfectly, and a couple plays a game where your receivers might not separate, but you still have an answer. The other thing is, there was a big question on Twitter the other day. I think it was Ben Fennell, talks a lot about NFL and strategy, and he says, I love two-man, the coverage, right? Which is 5 guys in man coverage and 2 safeties over the top, which feels like the safest coverage, right? I get everybody manned up and I got 2 safeties helping deep, right? This is going to win. And you know why it's used so infrequently in the NFL, and it's because you have nobody accounting for the quarterback, right? You a mobile quarterback crushes that because nobody has their eyes on the QB, and you have 4 rushers and you have 6 escape routes, and you just can't run that coverage. So I think that's another part of the mobile quarterback experience. When you have a guy that can scramble, or you have a guy that you have to account for in the run game, it does dictate coverages.
But
that
I
you're
think
going to see.
I would go back another step. I don't think it's just a guy will take off and scramble. Like, I think it's talking about a guy that will move the pocket, that will be on the run at times, that will get out of plays, that will roll to the right or left, that will scramble to the right or left and still make a throw. So
Burrow's in that bucket for you?
Yeah. So if you look at all plays where a quarterback has either rolled in one direction or the other, you know, roll out, scrambled, and or just moved essentially in a major way from the pocket. Brady has done that 22 times this year, right? Patrick Mahomes has done that 163 times this year. So it's like an order of magnitude in a different direction. Even Joe Burrow has done it like 3-4 times more than Tom Brady.
I wouldn't use Brady as a comparison here, though, because he's playing a different game now. He's 45, and he is very purposely trying to stay in the pocket.
Yeah, but that's like, this is the immobile quarterback that is becoming a relic that doesn't really exist anymore because everybody's choosing these guys that can move.
Well, here's what I would say about that, right? Brady from 2014 to 2020 or whatever it was would have a handful of those plays where he did expand his game and made some out of structure, outside the pocket types of plays. It was never his game. But again, this is like in baseball chasing a guy that throws 88 miles an hour with incredible command. It's like saying, I want everybody to be Greg Maddux. It's like, well, you can't be so good with your command and control that chasing that is fool's gold, right?
I mean, yeah.
That's why you don't want to chase Brady, Breeze, or Manning, because they're so much better at everybody at winning from the pocket. Decision-making, accuracy, timing. That's why you can't chase that guy, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
It's as rare as a Josh Allen.
Picking another year at random, he had 50 of them in 2016, which is, more than twice the number that he has now. But it's also Aaron Rodgers that year led the league with 162. So like it's an order of magnitude less than all the quarterbacks that we're seeing move in that direction now. Like Brady is the last of the old school.
Well, what about Kirk Cousins?
What about Kirk Cousins? You're going to make me find Kirk Cousins.
So like it's like a loaded question because it's always posed as, do you need this thing to win? And it's not really true. You don't absolutely need this one thing to win, because like the Kirk Cousins Vikings could win this year. They could.
Yeah.
And when you're analyzing the NFL, first off, we know you don't just look at the Super Bowl winner and say, do what they did. And then if you are kind of smart, you say, okay, who's in the Final Four, right? And if Kirk Cousins and the Vikings make the Final Four, and it's the Vikings, the Eagles, and then the Chiefs and the Bills, right? Is there everybody needs a Mahomes or an Allen to win in the NFL? Well, yeah, they're the best quarterbacks in the NFL. You need a Mahomes, Allen, or a Burrow, right? Or everybody needs an Eagles, Jalen Hurts. That's the new wave. Oh, but Kirk Cousins throws a wrench in it because he doesn't move, except that one time he outran Zach Allen, whoever it was.
Poor old Zach Allen.
So it's kind of like a loaded question. Do you have to have this one thing, a mobile quarterback, to win?
Well, okay, but if you just look at the quarterbacks, just look at PFF grades right now, right? For this year, Mahomes, number 1, obviously yes. Burrow, number 2, also yes, I think. Josh Allen, number 3, absolutely yes. Jalen Hurts, number 4, absolutely yes. Andy Dalton, number 5, no. Lamar, Jacoby, no. Geno, yes. Tua, no. So the top 5 essentially is taken care of before you get to any quarterback where it's even debatable. So I suppose the question is more, are you putting a ceiling on what you can be if you don't bring this thing to the table?
I would say yes, because but the ceiling is there because players probably aren't going to be Brady, Breeze, or Manning, right? Because this was probably true even when they were in the league, because you would just take them out of the equation. And I guess you had Phillip Rivers, you had Big Ben at the end of his career. I guess those would be considered immobile guys. Big Ben would break free from a lot of tackles and stuff, but they were pretty much immobile. So, yeah, I mean, is this an advantage to have a running quarterback or a guy that's mobile? Yes. Are there more teams tapping into this rushing ability as part of their offense? Absolutely. But I look at Mahomes as a guy that they're not using him in the design run game often. They'll run like the occasional speed option. But what makes him special is you can't play certain coverages against him, right? The Chiefs are so tough to defend because they have a good scheme that's going to get open. And if the scheme doesn't work, Mahomes is going to scramble around and create an open receiver. And then if he scrambles around and he doesn't create an open receiver, he's going to be just fast enough to pick up a first down. That is a cheat code when you have it. Absolutely. So, yeah, I think it's a huge advantage to have that level of mobility. It's also a huge advantage from a Josh Allen perspective. They can run QB sweep whenever they want on 3rd and 3, and he can scramble. He's part of the design game. And it's also a big cheat code to have a Jalen Hurts, Justin Fields, or Lamar Jackson as a part of your run game where they're making life easier for everyone else.
Yeah, I think it does two things. I think it raises the floor of an offense and a quarterback, it makes it easier for them to play the game, essentially, at a viable level. So if Jalen Hurts couldn't run, would he still be the starter in Philadelphia if all he could do was stand in the pocket and make plays as a passer? I don't think he'd have made it past the first year. Justin Fields. If Fields couldn't do what he can do on the ground, would he still be the quarterback for the Chicago Bears based off simply what he's doing with his arm? Probably not. Like it raises that floor and means you can buy time to develop the other area, which is, of course, still 100% necessary. And then the other thing it does is it increases the ceiling as well. Like it raises everything, because if you have a quarterback that's really, really good as a passer, and all of a sudden you say, okay, now wave the magic wand, and now you're also not possible to be tackled behind the line of scrimmage. Like Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes is essentially an all-pro caliber quarterback that somebody has waved a magic wand over, and now he's just impossible to get corralled in the backfield. The guy doesn't ever take a sack. You can't track him down because apparently he's able to run in a circle 103% as fast as he can run in a straight line, also able to run 101% faster than the guy chasing him, regardless of who that guy is. So all of a sudden that makes Mahomes the greatest quarterback the game's ever seen, because you just added this whole layer of stuff that makes it impossible to defend. So we've reached this point where I think, is it necessary to have that? No, because Tom Brady still exists, because Kirk Cousins can still play at a Pro Bowl level, and yet the second Kirk Cousins has to move, you're like, play's over. Rack up the next one. This is it. This is over. This is done. So obviously you can still play and still function and still play at a high level with that level or that style of play and those limitations. But I think we've definitely reached the stage where it makes everything better across the board. So it's always a good thing if a guy has that.
Yes, I completely agree. I mean, look, you can also have those games where if the passing game is off, you could still have success, right? That's the idea of raising the floor. You could still pick up 50 or 60 yards on the ground, whether designed runs or scrambles, steal a few first downs. The Giants this year with Daniel Jones, there are games where Daniel Jones doesn't have a great passing line, but before there's 6 or 7 first downs in there as a runner. Yeah, I think it's a different way to win. And the other thing that we're going to see, I believe, in the NFL is different ways to win. Other teams are going to win Super Bowls, right? We went through this stretch of Tom Brady-led teams winning every other year for the last 8-10 years. And even though I think there is a clear Mahomes, Allen, Burrow at the top of the QB charts right now, who are the best quarterbacks, I don't know that those guys, their teams are going to win the Super Bowl every year. You might have the Eagles win with Jalen Hurts in a different style this year. You might randomly have a different team and a different style win in different years, and that's gonna it's gonna open things up a little bit to, there are different ways to win, because it's not the same quarterback leading, Super Bowl wins every year. Unless Mahomes and the Chiefs do become the dynasty that everybody thought. I do think there's going to be different styles that win over the next 10 to 15 years or have opportunities to win. So, yeah, it's a huge advantage to have a running quarterback. The analytics people try to use yards before contact as an example, right? Like a quarterback's yards before contact on a design run is so much higher than, say, a running back. I think a little bit of that is selection bias, because they're pulling the ball when they have the best opportunity. But that is, even if it's cheating the stat, that is showing what the cheat code is, right? Just doing a zone read or running power where the quarterback can pull it is showing the advantage that you have there. It changes the arithmetic of the defense.
There's a reason that entire college offenses have functioned running the option. Like, that's the offense. You know what I mean? Because it is basically a cheat code.
Make the defense wrong.
It's a way of invalidating the fact that you have superior athletes and players than we do. We're going to cause confusion. We are going to put you in a bind, and we are going to beat you schematically in a way that you don't really have an answer to. And the NFL never tapped into that because quarterbacks are too valuable. You didn't want to risk them getting hurt. Now they've just decided, you know what, it's actually worth the trade-off.
Yeah, so again, I'm very careful with the notion that, like, there's only one way to win in the NFL now. Get on board or be left behind. But I would say for defenses too, when you're trying to defend Mahomes, Allen, Lamar, whoever, Herbert, any of these guys, think about the difficulty there, right? You have to defend regular throws from the pocket. You have to defend throws outside the pocket. How do you build your defense to stop those guys? When you're trying to beat the Lamar Ravens you have to take on a power running game where he's also the fastest player on the field, right? You have to take on power runs in a Gus Edwards type of running back, and then, oh, by the way, Lamar's the fastest guy on the field. He could run it on any given play as well. With the Chiefs, we talked about, do you want a designated edge rusher who's so good at getting off blocks he's going to keep Mahomes in the pocket? Like that level of specification. Well, Mahomes is special inside the pocket, outside the pocket, and as a scrambler. How do you build your team to defend that? I think that is as big of an issue as anything. The advantage that they bring as runners, and then the disadvantage that they put on the defense, because you got to build a linebacker unit and a secondary and a defensive line to handle this.
This is going to be relevant when we get to draft conversations as well. But I think it's reaching the point where it's like arm strength to me. Like, can you survive in the NFL with a marginal NFL arm? Yes. Does it make it so much harder? Yes. So if you're looking at these quarterbacks in the draft and you're evaluating, okay, who do I like more? Who has better chance of panning out, et cetera, one of the questions you have to be asking is, if the answer to the question, does this guy have NFL mobility, is no, he better be amazing at everything else, because he needs to be now. Like, it's not an even debate anymore. So it's like arm strength. If this guy doesn't have a strong NFL arm, he had better be incredible at the other stuff, the sliders that I talk about. Like, if one of them is way down, the other two had better be sky high. Otherwise, this thing isn't working. So I think quarterback mobility is now reaching that kind of level to me, where if you don't have that, you need to be really, really good at everything else.
The Zach Wilson's a hot topic right now because he just got benched again and he's looked absolutely disastrous on the field. He's rushed for 102 yards this year. He's picked up a couple key first downs, right? That was his game against Buffalo. He had 7 first downs on the ground so far this year. If Zach Wilson had Justin Fields' level of mobility, would he still be the starter? Right,
Probably.
like those ugly Zach Wilson games, when the pocket game isn't there or the passing game isn't there, if he could steal 80 yards on the ground, all right, I can't throw tonight, but I'll scramble, I'll be part of the design game, he'd still probably be the starting quarterback there.
Yeah.
That's the type of stuff I think we're talking about. The margin for error for Zach Wilson isn't there. Look, Justin Fields looked just as bad as Zach Wilson for a portion, like the early part of his career.
Right.
But once they tapped into his rushing ability, then it did, as you always say, buys time for him to develop as a passer and opens up more throws. And it's because you have to have defenders accounting for Justin Fields. He's going to have more open throws inherently.
And it's a different level of athleticism in college than it is in the NFL. Like, Zach Wilson was athletic enough to be able to play that way in college. He's not athletic enough to be able to play that way in the NFL. Same way like Christian Ponder wasn't. Like, there's a difference between athleticism required to do that in college and the NFL.